I started this channel back in 2020, so it has almost been 5 years of solo challenge content, and 5 years since I started my first project on this channel, which is beating Pokemon Yellow with every species. I am going to complete that project this year. Part of doing that is completing the game with 3 Pokemon that I have honestly been dreading using: Vulpix, Ponyta, and Growlithe. I don't really like fire types, I personally don't find them intuitive to use, and they are especially bad in Pokemon Yellow version. We're going to talk about why throughout this video. Anyways, today we're going to start with the first of these 3 Pokemon, and personally I think that it's going to do the best because it's a fire type with a decent special stat. For base stats, Vulpix has 38 HP, 65 speed, giving it a 12.5% chance to crit, 41 attack, 40 defense, and 65 special. It has a medium fast growth rate, and of these 3 fire types, this is the better growth rate. It also has a fantastic move pool, starting with Ember and Tail Whip, 2 moves that do not combo well together, although they both do have early game usages. It learns Quick Attack at level 16, Roar at level 21, but remember this move has no effect in trainer battles in Generation 1. Confuse Ray at 28, and then 2 very useful same type attack bonus moves. Flamethrower at only level 35, and the best fire move in Generation 1, Fire Spin at level 42. I know that this is the best fire move in Generation 1 because Moltres starts with it, and a bunch of fire types like Charizard get it as their final level up fire type move. Clearly the developers had high hopes for this thing to be a game changer, and with 70% accuracy, it's gonna hit more often than not. Now, one thing I should mention in the early game is the back sprite for Vulpix. It's not very good. This one's pretty bad. All 3 of these Pokemon do not have exceptional back sprites, but I think of the 3, Growlithe is the best, with Vulpix being the worst. We need to talk about early game training. Pokemon Yellow, in comparison with Pokemon Red and Blue, has a different early game because Brock is 2 levels lower. His Geodude's level 10 and his Onix is level 12. This is obviously to make him a little bit easier on the player when they start with a Pikachu. This also helps out fire types specifically because using Ember, which is resisted, I'm gonna have to make my way through 2 rock type Pokemon. Luckily with Ember on my set, I can defeat all of the bug catchers in Viridian Forest extremely quickly. The first guy takes 2 hits per Caterpie, but then by the time I'm facing the second bug catcher, I am one-hitting his Pokemon. Well, after the first Metapod, which hangs on a sliver. In Pokemon Yellow, this bug catcher is an exclusive. He was not in Red and Blue, so he gives me a little bit more experience to level up prior to Brock. After defeating the mandatory bug catcher, my Vulpix levels up almost to 10 over a damage rounding threshold. I fight some wild Pokemon to level up because the non-linear damage increases in the Pokemon games are much bigger when you're at lower levels, so it will really improve Vulpix's chances against Brock at a double-digit level. Okay, I was feeling confident. I skip the junior trainer in the Pewter City gym and go straight for Brock. Geodude is first. It looks like I'm going to 5-hit it using Ember, which is not great. Although on the second turn, I need to draw your attention to something. Vulpix burns. This is a 10% chance to happen whenever I use Ember. Look at Geodude's attack stat. It gets halved from 22 down to 11. Now Brock has 5 full heals to use per Pokemon. In this case, he heals Geodude right away because that's how he's coded. Every time he has a status condition, he's going to heal it right away. However, you'll notice that Geodude's attack does not recover when the status condition is removed. Now, if I am fortunate enough to burn the Geodude for a second time, it will again have its attack stat, meaning for each burn that I inflict on his Pokemon, they progressively become worse and worse throughout the battle. Because of this, Geodude is very easy to knock out, and I move on to the Onix with more than half health. I get lucky here as well, burning the Onix on the first turn it's in battle. Also, it never really had good attack, and if you want to see these compounding burn debuffs stack up, you get to, because then Onix uses Bide, I have to spam Tail Whip so it's not accumulating more damage, and every time I spam Tail Whip, it recalculates Onix's stats, not just its defense. This results in Onix being left with 1 attack by the time it finally unleashes energy. By the way, Generation 1 just keeps on giving. You're going to be confused with how much damage Vulpix just took after using only 1 Ember against the Onix. Well, when you use a move that's successful but doesn't deal any damage, it just adds the last amount of damage dealt to Onix into the Bide counter. This is because the last amount of damage dealt is not reset when you use a move that deals 0 damage. I can't believe it, but I'm gonna have to keep talking about Bide. There's another niche thing going on here that you might be curious about. In some cases, you have seen me in the past confuse Pokemon and then use Bide. The damage that they deal to themselves, self-inflicted, is then added to my Bide counter and I'll deal it back to them, like against Misty's Starmie with some Pokemon. You might be wondering if there's a glitch around Burn where it's accumulating damage into the Bide counter because Onix is slowly dealing damage to itself with this status condition, and no, that's not happening. So Burn isn't impacting this move in any meaningful way, other than giving me free turns of damage because there's a quirk around Brock using full heals. When he is using Bide, he will not heal his Pokemon. As a result, Onix takes damage every turn with the status condition. Also, to make things even worse, I get another lucky burn as soon as he heals the status condition, forcing him to use another full heal. Yeah, things are not going well for Brock today. I burn the Onix for a third time. After that, I knock it out and take an easy win over the first gym leader. Although, I think this was a very lucky battle, and I am so sorry for how slow all of that footage was. Okay, off onto Route 3 we go with Vulpix. It's actually having a really good early game so far, and this is where I need to talk about fire types in the early game, because outside of the gym leaders, Brock and Misty, they have fantastic matchups against all the random Pokemon. Super effective damage against all of these bugs. Then on youngster Ben, he has a Rattata and an Ekans. Normal and poison types are also very common in the early game, and I have neutral damage against them. Plus, these Pokemon tend to not have particularly impressive special stats, so using Ember is great. I can also make choices here like fighting the bug catcher rather than fighting the Lass. This provides me with a little bit more experience, and it's very quick because I'm super effective against all of his Pokemon. And I want to continue thinking about the training that I'm doing inside Mount Moon. I need to prepare for Misty. Ideally with Vulpix, I'm going to outspeed her Starmie, which has 56 speed, and right now at level 14, I only have 28. So doing a lot of training in this section of the game is going to be mandatory. Well, unless I want to get a lucky win with something like Confuse Ray at level 28, or maybe a critical hit with something like Body Slam or Dig. I'll talk about those options in a little bit. For now, I fight the Super Nerd and Bug Catcher over by the Rare Candy, the Lass who has 2 Grass-type Pokemon, although here, I need to mention to you that Grass-type Pokemon have good special stats, so Fire-type moves are not actually that good against them in Generation 1. To ensure that I'm going to last long enough in the cave, I go down this ladder, fight the Rocket, and grab the Ether to replenish my PP. I take on the Youngster, skip the Hiker, fight the Rocket. This guy was moved. In Red and Blue, he's over by the exit, but now he's over here. Also, on this floor, there's a bunch of Paras that show up. These are quick experience, so I just knock them out. Defeating the mandatory Super Nerd brings Vulpix up to level 18. I grab the Dome Fossil, then fight Jesse and James. They're easy to defeat, and with them out of the way, now Vulpix is heading into Cerulean City. There's no choice here today. I'm gonna fight the rival first. It doesn't make any sense to take on Misty now with only Quick Attack for damage. Although, if I was using this move for primary damage, I wouldn't have to worry about my speed matchup against the Starmie. That said, I don't think Quick Attack is gonna be doing enough damage to the Water-type Pokemon, which is pretty defensive. I want to have a move that has a lot more oomph before I fight her. The rival on Nugget Bridge is an interesting case. For a lot of Pokemon, he's really difficult, but whenever using a special attacker, he's really not that intimidating. You usually have good damage against the Sandshrew and can knock it out in 2 turns. That was what was supposed to happen here, but I get a critical hit, so Sandshrew falls to 1 turn, meaning it can't use Sand Attack. While Rattata does a lot of damage because it gets a critical hit with Hyper Fang, its best move, I survive with half health, knock it out, move on to the Eevee, miss a little bit because of Sand Attack, but in the end I'm able to finish off his ace. Along Nugget Bridge, let's look at some details of Vulpix. The first 2 bugs are easy to one-shot. This is simple. Against the Lass's team, I'm not able to one-hit the Pidgey. This puts me in a bad position. I get hit by a critical hit Gust and then a Quick Attack, bringing Vulpix down to 8 hit points before the Nidoran female. And it takes 2 hits to knock out as well. It goes for Scratch, leaving me with only 4 hit points. So that was a really close fight. The next battle against this youngster also illustrates my point, which is going to be that Vulpix just feels like its base stats are slightly too low to be getting consistent one-hits. For example, the Rattata survives my hit here with a sliver of health. Then the Ekans is also able to survive, and I crit the Zubat, but it probably would have been a 2-hit as well. The following Lass takes a bunch of 2-hits, the Mankey is a 2-hit, and the Pokemon on the final Rockets teams, when I don't get critical hits, are also 2-shots. If Vulpix had 70 base special instead of 65, I would have one-shot the Rattata at least on this route, speeding up my progress just slightly. And throughout this playthrough, I felt like this continued. It feels like in a lot of cases, Vulpix is just slightly falling short of the damage it needs with special or physical moves to get one less turn against the enemy Pokemon. And number of turns in battle is what really matters in Pokemon games, especially when you're speed running. As I'm getting towards the end of Route 25, let's check in with Vulpix's speed stat. It has 43 right now, so I am nowhere near close outspeeding Misty's Starmie, and Bubble Beams are going to do a lot of damage. I don't think it makes sense to stay in Cerulean City after rescuing Bill, so I'm going to defeat the Rocket outside of the city, earn myself the Dig TM, which Vulpix can learn. I'm going to teach it right away because this move has base 100 power in Generation 1. With it on my set, I'm not going to fight Misty. We're heading to Vermilion City first. On my way, I have to face Sandy. Her team also survives Embers, giving these Pidgeys chances to use Sand Attack and really mess me up. This isn't a case where 5 more points in my special stat would give me knockouts, but maybe 10 more would. She's a nuisance, but I do make it through her without a reset. Okay, SSN time. Today I'm picking up Rest. This is the safest possible play when using a fire type. You'll see why once we get to Lance. Outside of that battle though, I don't really want to be relying on the healing move just because it takes so long. There's 2 more things to do on the ship before fighting the rival. Pick up the Body Slam TM, which I'm going to teach to Vulpix in the place of Tail Whip, and then grab the 1 rare candy. This is also going to be incredibly useful for Lance later in the game. I need to ensure that Vulpix arrives at him at a good level. If I don't have enough damage to knock out the Gyarados quickly, it's going to get me with its Hydro Pumps. It is the singular late game Pokemon that fire types need to prepare for in Red and Blue. I learned this recently when I streamed Charizard in those games. It did very well, by the way. After I complete these 3 first stage fire types in Pokemon Yellow, it will be the only remaining fire type that I haven't ranked in my tier list. So there is still hope of this typing getting an S tier placement in the Yellow version tier list. Now Gyarados isn't the only late game threat for fire types in Pokemon Yellow. We have Giovanni's team and then the champion Sandslash. Plus, I should mention Lorelei. She's kind of a water type specialist. The context of what I'm working towards is very important in these playthroughs. It may seem like in many cases I'm spending way too long training or picking up items that I don't need to. I am doing it so that I don't have problems against these significant foes in the late game. But in the next little section, I do have to contend with Misty, and after defeating the rival on the SSN, my speed stat is approaching what it needs to be, but I'm not quite there yet. Vulpix is only at 49, so I need to decide if I'm going to fight Misty with an outspeed or not. If I want to, I can fight a bunch more trainers on the SSN, as well as on Route 11 for extra experience. After the ship sailed away, I did decide to do some extra training on Route 11, because the yields here are fairly efficient if you have access to Dig. I can fight this youngster who has Nidoran Male and Nidorino, and then some other engineers who have electric type Pokemon. I almost got to level 28 during this grind, but there aren't enough efficient trainers to continue here, so I'm gonna go back to Cerulean City, and it looks like I'm fighting Misty when I'm slower. Taking care of the junior trainer levels Vulpix up to 28, and I have a choice. Do I want to teach Confuse Ray? I decided against it, keeping Quick Attack instead. Okay, now time for Misty. Staryu's first. I go for Dig, praying that she doesn't use her X defend. She doesn't. The powerful ground type move hits and Staryu faints to a single turn. Okay, time for the Starmie. It goes for Bubble Beam, gets a critical hit, dealing devastating damage to Vulpix. But the fire type hangs on with 6 hit points, uses Body Slam, and does about a third. However, it doesn't paralyze. So I'm gonna have to continue attacking with moves other than Quick Attack. Starmie is locked into either Water Gun or Bubble Beam, and the only way she wouldn't attack, well, is if she gets a Gen 1 miss or uses her X defend. In this case, she attacks with Water Gun and Vulpix faints, getting its first reset. In the next battle, I once again one-shot the Staryu, so it looks like that's fairly consistent. I checked the damage ranges in post for all of you, and at level 28, I have a 75% chance to one-shot. Against the Starmie, it looks like I'm going to 3-hit with Body Slam. The reason I am not using Dig is because I don't want to give her time to roll an X defend, and then she'll take less damage and probably defeat me using Water Gun and Bubble Beam anyway. I get a lucky critical hit with Body Slam. It deals more than half, but then after a critical hit Water Gun on the first turn, Bubble Beam takes care of Vulpix again. The next battle is a good illustration of what happens when you use Dig, because sometimes Misty uses X-Defend, survives your hit, and then she can't use X-Defend on Staryu anymore, meaning it has to go for Water Gun. In this case, it does some damage, and I'm left in a bad position by the time the Starmie comes out. I take my third reset here. I think all of you are probably getting a sense for why I was so obsessed with speed stats before the Misty battle. I really wanted to move first against the Starmie because all of this is just going to be so much easier if I can do that. One way for this to happen is even if Misty uses her X-Defend, which she does on Starmie, I can get Paralysis, preventing it from attacking, and then I can hopefully get enough Body Slams and Digs in to knock it out. In this case, I'm going to need 4 Body Slams. Starmie doesn't move because of Paralysis, and then my 4th Body Slam hits, knocking out her ace. With absolutely no interruptions, we're going right to Surge. This guy is so good, right? He's got a level 28 Raichu. It's going to be so scary. Well, I can just use Dig. It does choose its best move, Thunderbolt, which does more than half to Vulpix, but then he goes for an X speed. I hit with Dig, doing massive damage, more than half. Raichu follows up the X speed with a Growl, and then I knock it out with Dig. Yep, well done, Surge. Okay, wrapping last time. Ember does one-shot both of her Oddish in this battle, which gives us a deceptive perception of how easy this battle is. We actually only have an 88% chance to knock out the Oddish, meaning Vulpix is exposed to Stun Spore here, and if she does land the status condition, then this fight can degenerate into Wrap over and over from the Bellsprout. Still though, the chance of this happening is quite low. I just did want you to know that it is a possibility even when using Fire-type moves against her Grass types. Inside Rock Tunnel, we have a bunch of battles that sometimes can cause problems. The first is against Slowbone. His Cubone has Bone Club, which is super effective. Luckily, the Slowpoke doesn't have any water type moves, and I can knock it out over 3 turns using Dig. If you want more proof that fire types are not really that good against grass types in Generation 1, check out this battle against the Status Condition Junior Trainer. I failed to knock out the Oddish in one hit with Ember, then it uses Sleep Powder and wastes a bunch of Vulpix's time before I finally defeat her. Also, the Bulbasaur at the end of this fight was going to be another 2-hit, just barely as well. However, I got a critical hit, speeding things up a little bit. The last of the trainers in this gauntlet is the self-destructing hiker. I have Dig for his Pokemon, which is fantastic, because when my Pokemon's underground, he can just use self-destruct, dealing no damage to Vulpix, and then Dig unleashes on the next Pokemon, knocking it out. For the Graveler, I knew that I wasn't going to one-hit because it's more defensive, so instead I go for Ember just in case I burn. Luckily for me, I get a critical hit, but I don't get the burn. Then it uses self-destruct, but Vulpix has full health, and it's able to hang on. We're going to come back to the theory I had before, which is Vulpix's special base stat is just slightly too low. In this case, I have a 64% chance to knock out this Oddish in one hit, and I have a 34% chance to knock out the Pidgey in one hit, in this case with my attack stat. I got the damage range against the Oddish, but I didn't get it against the Pidgey. I'm re-emphasizing this point here because I'm going to go into the hideout and do some extra training, as well as grabbing other items. I want to be able to get a good number of vitamins with Vulpix, but I also want to pick up the Double Edge TM. This could be useful. When I'm streaming, some people have started calling this the year of Double Edge, because I have started using it more and more in those runs to great success. I still don't like this move. I really hate taking recoil damage because it's another factor in all of these battles that I have to calculate around. Also, when doing a solo challenge, you have to fight 5 to 6 Pokemon in a row in the late game, so using Double Edge early in the battle can feel really bad. But sometimes for the extra damage, it is worth it. After all, Gym Leader Matt convinced me that this move could be useful in some scenarios when he said that it's essentially Earthquake for neutral damage against pretty much every target that also deals recoil damage. By the way, Double Edge's base power was increased from 100 to 120 starting in Generation 2. In the department store, I decide to buy Calcium. I pick up 3 to improve Vulpix's special stat. The rival in Pokemon Tower, I'm doing one cute thing here, which is using Ember against the Fearow. Then if he uses Mirror Move, it's not going to do much damage to Vulpix. If I just went for Body Slam, it could potentially paralyze me and inflict a bunch of damage because that move gets the same type attack bonus when Fearow uses it. After that, the rest of his team is kind of slow to knock out, like this Shelder specifically. This thing has the potential to cause problems in the late game once it evolves into a Cloyster, but for now it's not an issue. Its only water type move is Withdraw, so it's stuck using that here. I knock out the Sandshrew in 2 hits. Here we get to see the Vulpix hypothesis once again. The ground type survives with a tiny sliver of health. How frustrating. Now you're probably thinking, why not just level up a little bit more and then you can just one-hit all of these Pokemon throughout the entire playthrough. And yeah, I could do that, but I really don't want to fight trainers that have bad experience yields if I can prevent it. One of the major things that I have learned in these solo challenges is that fighting the correct trainers improves your speed so much. When you start fighting people that give terrible experience yields, then times begin to plummet. This is one of the major differentiating factors between my old playthroughs and my new ones. If I say came back and did another run with Coughing, I'm sure I could improve its time greatly just by fighting more intelligent trainers throughout the playthrough. Okay, Vulpix has Dig, so Agatha Jr., no problems. I can one-shot all of the Ghastly inside a Pokemon Tower. As I'm fighting Jesse and James, let's check in with Vulpix's level. After this fight, I'm going to be 34, which is one level away from getting Flamethrower. So I think it now makes sense to take the trip to Erica's gym and fight some of the Grass-type trainers inside here. These people don't give exceptional experience yields, but fighting them now in the effort to get Flamethrower does make sense in the context of the larger playthrough. After defeating only 3 of the trainers, I level up to 35, get the powerful Fire-type move, and then take on Erica. Tangela, one shot with Flamethrower. Weepinbell, one shot with Flamethrower. What did you expect? And of course, Gloom is also a one hit with Flamethrower. It would be really weird if one of these first stage fire types lost to Erica. That just doesn't seem like it's going to be possible after how well Vulpix just performed. Cycling Road is next. Here I'm going to fight 3 trainers, the Grimy Biker, Double Wheezing, and finally Biker Boss. While I'm doing this training, let me mention another benefit that Vulpix has as a stone evolution. With a bunch of other first stage Pokemon, whenever you get to an esteemed level around 36 to 40, the Pokemon starts to evolve, playing an animation which you have to cancel to stay as a first stage Pokemon. This is a disadvantage that a Pokemon like Ponyta has, but Vulpix doesn't. It never plays the animation because I need to use a stone to evolve it to Ninetales. These animations really do stack up, and in the past I've calculated it to be around a minute of time lost just because of canceling them. People have suggested that I should mod them out, but I don't think this is the way to do it. Canceling evolution is a part of these games, and I'm not going to remove it just to make these Pokemon have artificially better results. I thought that I could fight Koga next with Vulpix, since I do have Flamethrower and he's essentially a bug-type specialist in Pokemon Yellow. Before fighting him inside his gym, I do some optional training against the 2 Tamers because they have exceptional experience yields. This brings Vulpix up to level 40 after the mandatory Juggler. Let's see how Koga goes. All 3 Venonats are an easy one-shot using Flamethrower, which leaves only his Venomoth. Of course, this is an intimidating rock-water type Pokemon. We need to be very careful. Luckily for me, Flamethrower is doing half, and Venomoth doesn't have great damage against Vulpix, so even though it's outspeeding and gets to attack twice, I knock it out with my second hit and earn myself the 5th badge. It boosts my speed stat, so Vulpix now has 88, which is very convenient. That's enough to outspeed the rival in Sylph's fastest Pokemon, Kadabra. Before fighting him, I'm going to fight Machoke Candy to get 1 more rare candy. Then I also pick up the Calcium to improve my special damage just a little bit. I fight the Stacked Scientist for good experience yields, and then take on this guy. I still don't have a good name for him. Here, I level up to 42, and I am going to teach Vulpix Fire Spin. This move seems like it's trash with 70% accuracy, but I think there is a niche use for it in this playthrough. There's no move reminder in Generation 1, so if I want to have access to it, I need to teach it and keep it from here on out. I finish off my training here against the Hypno Sandwich, leveling up to 43 over a damage rounding threshold, and now I'm going to give the rival a try. I wasn't extremely confident in the victory here, but I do think it will be possible. After all, Flamethrower is going to do decent damage to both the Sandslash and the Cloyster. If I can defeat them, then Dig will be very good against his remaining 3 Pokemon. While the Sandslash isn't a one-hit, luckily it only goes for Poison Sting, dealing a pathetic amount of damage before I knock it out. Cloyster's next. It does go for Clamp, but it only hits twice, so Vulpix has half health by the time I knock it out and move on to the Magneton. Dig isn't able to one-hit. Luckily for me, the Electric type just uses Tackle. I move on to the Kadabra. I'm faster, Dig does massive damage, finishing it, and only Flareon remains. I use Dig, the Evolution survives, goes for Sand Attack. Luckily, I do not miss my next hit, and with that, the rival's done. Okay, Jesse and James, I'm talking about this fight not because they're difficult, but because Serena Vale has completed art for them. I absolutely love this piece. Every time I fight them, I get a smile on my face looking at it. Unlike Wheezing, it's pretty sad. Also, they're sad because they're really easy. They're just terrible trainers in this game, which I guess is anime accurate. Now that my voice has fully recovered, I have started doing a new process behind the scenes which makes these videos a lot faster for us to make. That is, when I'm recording the first playthrough, I'm leaving little audio notes as I go, and this is what I said at the beginning of the Giovanni fight. Giovanni, I assume we won't put this one in the video because it's probably going to be pretty easy. We will only keep this fight in the cases where it's difficult or I have something to say. He was kind enough to give me something to talk about using his signature item. Maybe I'll talk about guard specs. There is a lot of them in this one. Oh. And yeah, you should be able to tell from the tone of my voice that I really wasn't expecting that. Giovanni and Sylph defeating Vulpix was not something I was expecting for this run. It's pretty rare when this happens. In the next battle, I make it back to the Nidoqueen and I still don't have good health. This time, I don't want it to go for Body Slam, so I'm going to use Fire Spin to trap it. In Generation 1, these moves do not allow the enemy to move until they miss. Because of this, I can drain the Nidoqueen down to half health, then use Flamethrower and knock it out, taking no damage. Coming out of this fight, my speed stat is an unfortunate value, 102, which is one less than Sabrina's Abra. After visiting Copycat and picking up Mimic, I head into Sabrina's gym and fight some optional trainers just to level up to 46 to ensure that I'll outspeed the Abra. The level up gives me 2 speed points, so that's good, let's face her now. Dig one-shots Abra, I move on to Kadabra. Here I'm going to go for Body Slam to prevent her from using X-Defend, at least that's my goal. She still does, and her Kadabra survives my second hit with a sliver of health. Once again, the Vulpix hypothesis. It just never has enough damage. Kadabra capitalizes on the fact that it's going to get a chance to attack, uses Psywave, deals 8 hit points of damage, and then faints. Alakazam is last. It goes for a full health recover. My Body Slam does about a third, then it chooses Psychic, which deals massive damage. Vulpix survives with only 16 hit points. But my next Body Slam inflicts paralysis, ensuring that I move first on the next turn, and as a result, Sabrina's defeated. This one was definitely a lucky win. Heading south to Cinnabar Island, I fight Psyche, but I'm not doing as much training as I maybe should be, considering that Blaine is coming up next. My confidence was a little bit too high because I have Dig. Inside his gym, I fight some of the trainers leveling up to 48, but I wasn't really pushing Vulpix's level as much as I maybe should have been. If you play too much Red and Blue, you will not know that in Pokemon Yellow, Blaine is one of the best, if not the best, gym leader in the game. Let me demonstrate to you why that's the case. Ninetales is first. I'm going to use Dig, and it's going to be a 2-shot. Along the way, I get hit by 1 quick attack, which is not really a big issue, but the Rapidash that's next has Stomp. This is a much more powerful physical move, and it is able to do significant damage. Plus, it also uses Growl, lowering my attack. This triggers the Vulpix hypothesis. Blaine uses a Super Potion, which is actually really rare in Pokemon Yellow. He never uses these at full health, unlike in Red and Blue. I finish off the Rapidash because he didn't heal enough and move on to the Arcanine, but this Pokemon is level 54. It's much higher than it is in Red and Blue. Also, it has a good moveset: Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Reflect, and Takedown. I don't want to get hit by any of the attacking moves. He can spam Reflect over and over again, but I just have to get lucky for that to play out. He doesn't have good AI, and that's actually a bad thing for Vulpix because it makes the Arcanine more likely to attack. In this case, it has a 3 out of 4 chance to attack, whereas if it had the AI modification, it would only have a 1 in 2 chance to attack, alternating between either Reflect or Takedown. And if it sets up the screen, then I'm going to do very little damage to it with my uses of Dig. After my attack is dropped, I'm only doing about a quarter, and he gets me with Takedown. I tried again. This time the Rapidash uses Takedown, so I arrive at the Arcanine with very little health. It uses Flamethrower and then Fire Blast to finish Vulpix. Up until now in the playthrough, I have been fighting trainers that give good experience yields. If I want to continue leveling up past 48, I'm going to have to start fighting the people that don't give good yields. For example, I fight the 4 trainers inside the gym that I haven't already battled. Doing this levels me only up to 49. I come back to Blaine, and it seems like things are going better. I'm about to get lucky and knock out the Arcanine, but then he uses Fire Blast and Vulpix faints. I went out to the sea, did some more training, leveling up to 50 over a damage rounding threshold before coming back to Blaine, but this increase in damage isn't really going to change the fight. You might be wondering, why not use rare candies now to improve your damage ranges here and make Blaine much easier? Yes, that is an option, but I was so scared of Lance's Gyarados Gyarados, I don't want to prematurely burn all my candies and then get stuck later in the game, where Gyarados is one-hitting me consistently with all of its Hydro Pumps. Lance does have good AI, so he is always going to spam the Water-type move. It feels unacceptable to me to arrive at Lance and require 2 misses from Hydro Pump in a row to be able to defeat him. So instead, I continue my training, and this is really starting to slow down, you can tell. By the time I finish off all the trainers surrounding Cinnabar Island, which are the highest level people I have access to at my current position in the game, I am only level 51. So I think I'm going to need to luck through Blaine. In this case, I can 2-shot the Ninetales, and even after 1 Growl, I am now able to 2-shot the Rapidash, which is pretty good. Then Arcanine starts using a bunch of Reflects. I have good health, so I can survive hits from Flamethrower, and as a result, I pull through with a lucky win against Blaine. Alright, it seems like everything's looking up for Vulpix, right? Giovanni is a trash gym leader. No. Not in yellow version. He is absolutely terrifying for fire types. 4 of his 5 Pokemon, no Earthquake. He leads with Dugtrio, which is very fast, and right now it will outspeed Vulpix. It has 133 speed, and the Persian has 135. My cute little Firefox only has 120. So as I make my way through Giovanni's gym, let's talk about one of the decision-making factors in these solo challenges that makes them so interesting. Right now my moveset is Flamethrower, Body Slam, Fire Spin, and Dig. All of these moves can only be learnt once in the playthrough. If I delete any of these moves, I cannot get them back. And for Giovanni, I want to leverage the grandfathered Mimic Double Team strategy for success. Essentially, Fire types, Electric types, and Poison types would all perform extremely badly in Pokemon Yellow if I didn't allow this strategy, just because Giovanni would wall them until ridiculous levels. A long time ago, my rules were worded in a way where I discovered that I could use this tactic to great success with these Pokemon, and I just still allow myself to do it to this day. If I want to teach Mimic so I have access to Double Team against Giovanni, then I need to give up one of my current moves. If I give up Flamethrower, then I can replace it later with Fire Blast, but I lose a bunch of PP and accuracy. But I do gain damage. If I give up Body Slam, then I can no longer paralyze key targets, and I think the status condition might be useful against Lance's Gyarados to get a win. Plus, I can upgrade my power here once again, teaching Double Edge, but then I get a downgrade because I also take recoil damage whenever I use the move. I could delete Fire Spin, but guess why I'm holding on to this move? Because I think it's going to be useful to trap Lance's Gyarados so it never deals damage with Hydro Pump. And giving up Dig prior to Agatha seems like a terrible decision. After all, it is the best, most reliable physical move that I have access to. Plus, it's also super effective against 3 of Giovanni's Pokemon, and Earthquake does not hit Pokemon when they're in the semi-invulnerable turn during Dig in Generation 1. I felt like I was stuck here. I wasn't sure what to give up, so I'm gonna go into the Giovanni fight and try it at this level with this moveset. It's not gonna go well. Look at how much damage Dugtrio's Dig does. It leaves me with 5 hit points, and I can't even one-shot his first Pokemon. The only reason I knock it out is because he chooses to use a guard spec. Instead of teaching Mimic, I'm gonna use Rare Candies to level up to get the outspeed on the Dugtrio and hopefully better damage ranges. I go up from 53 to 60. Okay, check this out. Flamethrower with a critical hit one-shots Dugtrio. Then I can 2-shot the following Persian, taking some damage from Fury Swipes. This leaves me in a good position for his final 3 Pokemon. Now, Dig and Flamethrower are both going to 2-hit the Nidoqueen and the Nidoking, so I use Flamethrower in the hopes that I'll burn to reduce damage from Earthquake. But I don't, and then Earthquake hits, dealing so much damage and Vulpix faints. If I want to win here, I need to have access to Mimic now. So I make the tough decision, and I teach it in the place of Body Slam. I quickly learn another lesson. I'm not going to be able to get by the Dugtrio efficiently if I don't outspeed. It can just go for Dig and one-shot. So I use Rare Candies up to level 59 so that I outspeed both the Dugtrio and the Persian, ensuring that I'm at least going to be able to knock out his first Pokemon, make it to the Persian, Mimic Double Team, and have a chance of setting up. But this still doesn't guarantee the win, because as I'm setting up my evasion, the Persian can still attack me. Slash always crits because Persian has outrageous base speed, and Fury Swipes does decent damage too. I take one more loss before I finally get set up and knock out the Persian. I don't have much health left over though. If the Nidoqueen, Nidoking, or Rhydon survive, they might be able to attack. Luckily for me, Double Team badge boosts all of my stats. As a result, Flamethrower inflicts massive damage, and both Nidoqueen and Nidoking are one-hits, but not the Rhydon because it's a rock type. It survives, it goes for Earthquake, but it misses because of my evasion boosts, and with that that, Giovanni's defeated. Blaine and Giovanni were a brutal combo for Vulpix to get through. Unfortunately for it, from here, things don't get much better. I do have to fight the rival next. He's pretty simple to manage now that I'm at a high level. Flamethrower one-shots the Sandslash and the Execute. I was worried about the Cloyster, but then I get a critical hit. Magneton's next. I have Dig, which is super effective, although it doesn't do enough damage. But the rival has potions, so he uses one of those and I take it out for free. Kadabra falls, leaving only Flareon, and it's pretty simple. Because of type effectiveness here, it's locked into using Smog or Leer, two moves that are ineffective. I'm going to prepare for the Elite Four now, doing training in Victory Road. It is ideal if you can get here without using rare candies, because then you gain more levels here fighting these people. Unfortunately, I needed the levels for Giovanni, so Vulpix is in a slightly suboptimal situation. I train up to level 62, and then to further prepare for the league, I head to the power plant to collect one extra rare candy. I hope I put the work in that I need to be successful with Vulpix during the league. It's time to find out. Lorelei is up first. Here, I have no way to set up, so I'm just going to knock the Dugong out as soon as possible, although I make a critical mistake here. Turn 1, I think I should have gone for Dig, because Lorelei's Dugong is likely to use Rest on turn 2. If I had gone for Dig, I would have dodged Bubble Beam on the first turn and taken no damage before moving on to the Cloyster. This would have given me a much better time against the Slowbro, or potentially allowed me to live on the Cloyster. It goes for Clamp, a water-type move, luckily missing. As a result, I arrive at the Slowbro, and here I'm going to use Mimic to steal Amnesia. Okay, something you need to know about the Slowbro. In yellow version, its move pool is so much better than it is in red and blue. It has Surf and Withdraw. On turn 1, it has a 50-50 chance of using either one of these moves. On turn 2, it is always going to use Withdraw, and on turn 3 and on, it's going to choose between the two again. Turn 1, it goes for Surf, dealing massive damage, and Vulpix survives on 1 hit point. Okay, so I'm still probably going to lose here. One of the coin flips, it's going to roll Surf and knock me out. But it just keeps rolling Withdraw. Because of that, I get fully set up, use Flamethrower, and I one-shot the water type. Am I going to win? If I get a critical hit, I might lose, but Flamethrower melts the Jinx. Lapras comes in. I don't crit, and with that, I defeat Lorelei on my first attempt. This was definitely lucky. Okay, there's a hiker in the next room. He's terrible. He's got ground moves. He's got rock moves. He's got rock Pokemon. It doesn't matter. Just spam Flamethrower, beat everything. I guess the Machamp survives. It usually does, but it's bad anyway. Agatha is the second member of the Elite Four. Here I have Dig, though. I was expecting a little bit more out of it. Maybe a one-shot on the first Gengar, but no. Once again, the Vulpix hypothesis. It just doesn't have enough damage to knock things out in one hit. The same is true for the Golbat, but the Haunter does go down. Arbok survives, again on red health. It does chip damage, taking me down to orange. The final Gengar once again survives, but she just uses a super potion, giving me the win. Theoretically, within my format, I believe that Vulpix has 3 options against Lance's Gyarados. It either uses Body Slam, Double Edge, or Fire Spin. In this case, I have gone all in on the Fire Spin strategy, so I have to do chip damage very slowly, bringing the Gyarados down to around 1/4 health before I can use Flamethrower to knock it out. If Fire Spin misses, which again is a 30% chance, then Gyarados will be able to attack, in which case it will always use Hydro Pump. This move has a 20% chance to miss, but if it doesn't, look at how much it does to Vulpix. This is devastating damage. Fire Spin misses again, and Gyarados takes its first victory over me. You might think that Body Slam is going to be significantly better than this. There's the chance to paralyze, and Vulpix is probably going to 3-hit. Well, maybe, but Vulpix has a low attack stat when compared with its special stat. Also, I want to emphasize the fact that Fire Spin has an advantage over Body Slam. That is, when it works, I will move on to the rest of the fight with full health, whereas with Body Slam, I will probably have to tank 1 Hydro Pump in the process. And even then, the Gyarados would have to fail to attack on 1 turn, or Vulpix would have to crit getting a 2-shot. And I'm skeptical right now that that damage range is even possible. So I've been waxing poetic about Body Slam here because Fire Spin actually manages to finish the Gyarados in the next battle. It has only knocked me out a single time. Now I have to use Dig to knock out the Dragonair, which does expose me to paralysis from either Thunder Wave or Thunderbolt. Luckily, Dragonair just misses a Slam. Perfect. This is where things get easier for Vulpix. On the second Dragonair, I can use Mimic, Steel, Ice Beam, and now I have super effective damage against all of Lance's remaining Pokemon. Dragonair falls to 1 hit, Aerodactyl comes in next, I have green health for it, but I am not faster. It has 7 more speed. As a result, it moves first, chooses Hyper Beam, gets a critical hit, and knocks out Vulpix. I was so devastated by this loss. I got through the Gyarados, but I couldn't make it past the Aerodactyl. So it looks like I have to go back to fire spinning the Gyarados, which is really frustrating. What's the chance that I'm able to knock it out in the very next battle? Well, the chances are pretty low. After a critical hit fire spin, I am going to finish it off with Flamethrower, but it's at red health, so Lance uses a Hyper Potion, forcing me to use more fire spins. However, the fire type move comes through for me. It just refuses to miss. I bring the Gyarados back down to low health and finish it with Flamethrower for a second time in a row. Vulpix is getting very lucky here. I knock out the Dragonair, Mimic Ice Beam. This time Aerodactyl chooses Fly, it doesn't get a critical hit, Vulpix survives, Ice Beam one-shots, and Dragonite is last. However, the second Dragonair did hit me with Bubble Beam, lowering my speed. So now I'm slower than Lance's final Pokemon, and ice moves in this game are not resisted by the fire type. So Dragonite chooses Blizzard. It does not very much damage, and as a result, Ice Beam hits, finishing Lance. With that luck, with that skill, it is time for Vulpix to move on to the champion. For this fight, I have taught Fire Blast in the place of Fire Spin and used all 3 of my PP ups on it so that I can use this move a total of 8 times. Sand Slash is first. I'm going to use Fire Blast right away to hope that I get the one-shot. I didn't want to chance things with Flamethrower and then fail to get the damage range that I needed. It goes down to 1 hit, Alakazam is next, I use Dig for physical damage, get a critical hit, and knock out the Psychic type. Executor is next, Fire Blast once again gets a one-shot, Magneton comes in, I have Dig for this thing. It is super effective, but it doesn't do enough damage. Magneton always refuses to die. This thing is the ultimate villain in Pokemon Yellow. It chooses Thunderbolt, does about a third, and then I knock it out. Okay, so we actually might do this first attempt against the champion. Cloyster is next. Despite being a water type, it takes neutral damage from Fire Blast, and it also has a trash special stat. And for good measure, Vulpix gets a critical hit. It goes down, leaving only Flareon. I have Dig, which is super effective, but the fire type sets up with Reflect first. I do about half. I have to knock it out over 2 more turns, but its quick attack doesn't do enough. Also, one last chance to see the Vulpix hypothesis. It fails to knock the Flareon out with its second attack using Dig. Still, it's a foregone conclusion. The champion's final Pokemon goes down, and I clock in with my first playthrough time. 1 hour, 7 minutes, and 44 seconds, with 14 resets at level 71 with a game time of 4 hours and 4 minutes. This time is not great, but hopefully that means it's leaving me a lot of room to improve its results in a follow-up playthrough. Here's the thing though, and this is something I've been noticing more and more as I have played these games with increasing frequency over the last year. If you weren't aware, prior to 2024, I wasn't actually playing the game a lot. I was spending more of my time on the channel building software behind the scenes so that everything could look beautiful for all of you when viewing these videos. I would play as much as I had to make the videos, but now I am playing significantly more, streaming Red version 2 to 3 times a week, usually on Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays. And I'm also making 2 videos every week, after coming out of Daily December, which was a video release every day, and most of those were versus videos, which require far more playing time from me than just solo videos like we did over the last 2 Daily Decembers. As I've increased the time that I'm putting into playing these games, my skill as a player has also started to improve. I have really noticed things like my overworld movement just feels a lot more crisp all of the time, and I'm not forgetting things a lot in the way that I used to when I was coming in and out of the game, spending weeks coding and then 2 days frantically playing a bunch of runs for a video. This experience is actually going to work against Vulpix in the follow-up playthrough because my first runs are a lot better than they used used to be now. To some of you, it might feel like the opposite is actually happening. If you look at one or two metrics exclusively, I mean resets or blackouts, you're gonna start thinking that my play is getting worse, but that's not what's happening. I have just started playing strategies that have the potential to yield far better times. All of my experience has taught me where it's important to take risks and where I can avoid taking risks altogether. Instead of just shooting for some arbitrary conception of what consistency is like I used to do at the beginning of the channel, I now know how to balance these things to give Pokemon much better results. I'm doing it in a long-winded way, but what I'm trying to say is that my play has improved to the point that my first playthroughs are starting to become more representative of what the Pokemon can accomplish. That's not the case overall. I still need to do follow-up playthroughs. First playthroughs will always have errors that can be weeded out in follow-up attempts. However, I think the delta between my first and second playthroughs is going to get smaller and smaller as my skill improves. In these playthroughs, there's a genuine tension all the time between playing more consistently and playing a little bit riskier with the chance to have a massive time lead. In the early game, I decided to go against this risky play because I think fire types have a lot of risk in the late game anyway that I'm going to have to deal with. I want my early game to be as solid as possible. So to accommodate for this, I fight one more trainer in the early game, leveling Vulpix up to 11 before I take on Brock. This changes the speed interactions. I'm tied with Onix now rather than being outsped, so Bide's going to be significantly less effective. If I was playing this run, say, a year or two ago, especially 2 years ago, I definitely would have leveled up to 12 to outspeed the Onix, but this just isn't necessary. One benefit to taking a slightly riskier approach to Brock is that you can just restart the playthrough and you don't lose that much time. But once I get to Cerulean City, I don't want to be restarting runs because that'll waste much more time. So my approach is going to flip against Misty. I want to ensure that I'm outspeeding her Starmie. This of course necessitates me going to the SSN first, grabbing Dig and Body Slam in the process, and then returning to Cerulean City after doing extended training on Route 11. The problem about my approach here is cleaning up all of the trainers that give decent experience yields doesn't quite level Vulpix up to 30. I thought that I was going to get the level up after defeating Misty's Staryu, but I don't, so I'm speed tied with the Starmie. This is still a major improvement rather than being undersped the entire time just like Brock's. So I'm going to play this out as long as I get a better Misty split than I did last time, and I am able to accomplish it with only one reset. I'm now 36 seconds ahead of my former pace. By the way, Lieutenant Surge gets really scary. He uses a massive Mega Kick, and Vulpix survives on 2 hit points, and then I get to use Quick Attack to knock out his fast electric Pokemon. Okay, Slowbone. I hate that I have to mention this guy. Anyways, Bone Club gets a massive critical hit before I knock out the Cubone, leaving me on around 1/3 health. Then the Slowpoke confuses me with confusion, Vulpix hits itself, and I take a reset here. Luckily, I saved before him because I know he is such a nightmare when using Fire-type Pokemon. In the department store, I buy 4 Calcium and 1 Carbos. The reason I split up my vitamin buy here is because if you buy 5 of one vitamin, then usually if you're doing extended training in the mid-game, you can't use one of the vitamins that you pick up for free in the overworld. Losing out on one of the free items doesn't make sense, so that's why I'm splitting up my stat experience yields here. The next section of the game is the extended grind for Vulpix. I fight Erica once I get access to Flamethrower, making her quick and easy. Then I do what I can only describe as a massive amount of training. I bring Vulpix all the way up to level 55 before I take on Blaine. This, just like my approach to Misty, is fairly conservative. I could luck through this with like an annoying strategy, using Fire Spin and then knocking out his Pokemon after trapping them, or I could potentially just try to luck through this with an occasional critical hit from Dig against his fire types. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to ensure that this fight was as smooth as is possible. With the over preparation, I'm able to beat him on my first attempt. For Giovanni, the key is deciding which move I'm going to give up so that I can use Double Team through Mimic for this fight and then still have a solution for Lance later on. I am once again going to be running the Fire Spin strategy. I tested out damage ranges with Body Slam using Vulpix against the Gyarados, and it just doesn't look very good because of Vulpix's low attack stat. With other fire types like Ponyta and Growlithe, this strategy is going to be far more viable. But with Vulpix, I think the Fire Spin strategy is the best solution. Still, using Mimic here is not a guaranteed win, but it is pretty close because after fully setting up, I'm going to one-hit both the Nidos and two-shot the Rhydon. Here, I continue my lead that I had during the Blaine split, so I'm 2 minutes and 45 seconds ahead of my former pace. The rival prior to the league is incredibly simple. This levels Vulpix up to 60. Up until now, I I have not used a single rare candy. I'm going to use 11 of them before Lorelei. This means I have skipped the power plant candy to save a little bit of time. Now, Lorelei can still be problematic. My solution here is to mimic Amnesia, set up and then sweep with Flamethrower. If I get to the Slowbro on low health, sometimes I'll lose. I do have one reset here before I completely destroy her on my second attempt. Now, I'll admit here that I slightly miscalculated things. I had initially intended to use the power plant candy to get to level 73 prior to Lance, so that would be 72 for Lorelei. But in this case, I thought I could cut it out and still just get there with experience. I made this choice on the fly, which is always a fatal mistake to make when doing these follow-up playthroughs. So after defeating Agatha, I'm only level 72, I'm really close to 73, but I wanted the damage rounding threshold for the Gyarados specifically. Going from level 72 to 73 increases the per hit damage of Fire Spin by 1, which really speeds up how quickly you knock out the Gyarados. However, we need to change up my move pool anyways because Flamethrower is not going to be good to rely on. I don't want to have to bring the Gyarados down to 25% health to knock it out with a fire type move. There are better options available to Vulpix. I teach Rest in the place of Dig so I have a chance to heal after Gyarados if I miss one of my Fire Spin hits. And then I teach Double Edge in the place of Flamethrower. Here are the damage ranges for this fight. Fire Spin takes 27 hits to knock out the Gyarados. If I want to be sure that I'll get the damage range, I need to bring it under 1/3 health and then I can knock it out. From there, the remainder of the fight is very simple. I can use Double Edge to two-shot the first Dragonair, mimic Ice Beam, and use this move to sweep the remainder of Lance's Pokemon all in a single hit each. Also, arriving here at Lance at level 72 or 73 ensures that I outspeed the Aerodactyl. At level 72, I have 171 speed. So while the small experience rooting problem does cause issues on the Gyarados, it won't for the remainder of the fight. Still, defeating Gyarados is annoying. If I miss 2 Fire Spins and it hits 2 Hydro Pumps, Vulpix is going to faint. But I still think this is the best option overall. Just spamming Double Edge, I would have to hit 3 times in a row. And since Hydro Pump always 2 hits, Gyarados would need to miss with Hydro Pump along the way. If I'm using Fire Spin, Gyarados can still miss with Hydro Pump and I can win. And Body Slam's damage ranges are worse than Double Edge. At level 72, it does between 29 and 34% damage every hit. So I only have a 33.9% chance to 3-shot the Gyarados when using that normal type move. So I definitely want to be using Double Edge for increased damage. The issue is that the recoil damage is going to knock out Vulpix at some damage ranges from Hydro Pump if it hits once. So Gyarados would need to miss twice unless I want to level Vulpix up more. And I have already done way too much training in this playthrough. So that's why I think Fire Spin is better. Plus, I really like that this move has a small niche use in the context of this entire series, because in most cases it's absolutely trash, despite what Game Freak is trying to have you think about this move. I have 3 resets against Lance, and then I get the luck I need. I knock out the Gyarados. I had good health from here, so I'm not even going to need to use Rest. I sweep the rest of his team, and now I'm 4 minutes and 42 seconds ahead of my former pace. Okay, the champion fight is pretty precise. I first experimented with mimicking Earthquake because I felt that that would be the best thing to do against both Alakazam and Magneton. Here's the thing though, a physical move on Vulpix just doesn't make sense once again. Using Body Slam against Gyarados didn't make sense, and using Earthquake here against the champion doesn't make sense. I want to knock out the Sandslash as fast as possible using Fire Blast. Then on the Alakazam, I can knock it out using a combination of Fire Blast and Double Edge, or just 2 shots with Fire Blast. There is inconsistency here. If I miss on the Sandslash, I'm probably going to lose. Also, if the Alakazam attacks me with a powerful move like Psychic, I'm also going to lose. But there's no way around this. Even if I had Earthquake or Dig from the beginning of the fight, I would still have to 2-hit the Alakazam. For the purposes of education, here are the damage ranges against the champion so you can see how all of this plays out. Earthquake and Double Edge do the same amount of damage, and Double Edge cannot one-shot the Alakazam. Fire Blast then becomes a non-recoil option that I can leverage. At level 73, I have a 60% chance to one-shot the Cloyster when using Fire Blast, and this is why I really wanted to level up over 73 for both Lance and the final battle, just to make both of these fights a little bit more consistent at the end of what is a very long playthrough. I think this final battle against the champion is actually really satisfying. I'm using Fire Blast on almost everything with a Fire-type Pokemon. I crush the Magneton Magneton with a lucky critical hit. Then on the Cloyster I get the damage range I need, leading to the Flareon where I can use Rest because it's only going to use Reflect or Quick Attack. From there, I can use Double Edge, knock the other fire type out, and take my victory. Vulpix gets a time of 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 38 seconds with 7 resets at level 74. This is a game time of 4 hours and 2 minutes, and it's 4 minutes and 5 seconds faster than my previous playthrough. This is not an earth-shattering improvement for Vulpix, but I'm still happy with how this playthrough went. I think I figured out most of the challenges that this fire type has to go up against. Now, I do want to mention, because someone is eventually going to try it, you could just use Fire Spin and cheese your way through this entire playthrough at every difficult moment. Please, be my guest. I'm not doing that. Let's rank Vulpix in the tier list. With its time today, under 1 hour and 8 minutes, it earns itself a place in the E tier, ahead of Hitmonchan, Machop, and Almanite, but behind Chansey and Raichu. The obvious comparison for Vulpix is against Charmander, who's 1 tier ahead of it. The first stage starter got a time of 55 minutes and 28 seconds. If you're curious why the starter is so much better, check out this video. Also, poor Rapidash, I will get around to re-ranking it on stream sometime this year. That's it for this video. Thank you so much if you support me directly. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next one. It might be a new year, but old habits stick around. I forgot to record Vulpix's voiceover for the Oak battle. In the first fight against him, I had bad luck right at the beginning, with Tauros getting a massive critical hit with Takedown and Vulpix surviving on only 3 health. I also burned with Fire Blast, so Tauros faints after that and then Executor comes in. From here, I use Rest, heal up, but Stomp is doing a decent amount of damage. Now, I'm pretty sure the only way to secure victory here is going to be using Hypnosis mimicked from Executor. Oak has 2 water-type Pokemon, Blastoise and Gyarados, and both of them have Hydro Pump. Also, he does have good AI. As a result, he's going to be spamming Hydro Pump with Gyarados and randomizing between Withdraw and Hydro Pump on Blastoise. Plus, I'm not going to knock them out very quickly because our levels are roughly on par. I'm 5 levels higher than Blastoise and 4 levels higher than Gyarados. I'll be 6 levels higher than Blastoise and 5 levels higher than Gyarados. While I've been streaming Pokemon Red this year, Executor has become kind of a meme in that series. It always causes problems when I face the champion. Yeah, here it's essentially the same Executor that the champion in Red and Blue has. This Executor is just at a higher level though, and even for a fire type, when I'm trying to heal with Rest, occasionally it'll knock me out. So I take 1 reset to Oak. I come back in, defeat the Executor this time with Fire Blast. I didn't have to heal, so that's a big advantage for me because the Tauros didn't get a critical hit. Arcanine's next. It is stuck using Roar, Leer, or Takedown. Of these, of course, the last is the worst. Leer will badge boost me, but that's not effective because I level up as soon as I knock the fire type out. Blastoise is next. This is where we have to use Hypnosis and Pray. It works. I follow it up with 3 Fire Blasts and the water type goes down. Gyarados is next. Again, Hypnosis and Pray. It works once again, and then I use Double Edge. My second one gets a critical hit, and with only 3 attacks, I finish off Oak's final Pokemon. Vulpix survives with 26 hit points. Okay, that's officially it. I'm going to try and not forget this segment in future videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.